Hi guys, and welcome to Learn Extra Maths Literacy Session 5. In this section, we're going to continue looking at financial maths. Specifically, we will look at income, expenses and budgets, and we will also look at inflation. First, let's look at the definition of income, expenses and budgets. Income is basically the money that any individual or any business receives for the goods or the services that they offer. So for example, if you go and work in a shop for a weekend, the money that you get in is your income. Expenses is any money that is spent by an individual or by a business, or it's basically any cost that you have to pay for. That is an expense. A budget is really just a financial plan that shows your expected income, so what you think you're going to get in, and your expected expenses, and it's always taken over a certain period of time, so it can be a month, a year, 2 months, or whatever the case is. Profits is the money that you will be left over with after you take into account all of your expenses. So if you take into account all of your income, then subtract out all of your expenses, what you are left with is your profit. So we can say that profit is equal to income minus expenses. Now sometimes it happens that your expenses are greater than your income. In this case, you won't be making a profit because you actually are spending more than you're getting in. In that case, you will make a loss. Another way to think of it is that a loss is equal to your expenses minus your income, where your expenses are greater than your income. Or if you want to think of it in terms of profit, if you work out your profits and you get a negative answer, since money is obviously not negative, it means that you have made a loss. A profit margin is really just another way to say find the percentage profit or the percentage loss. So to work out your profit margin, what you would do is you take your selling price minus the cost price, divide that by the cost price, and then times by 100. This will then give you your percentage profit or your percentage loss, or you can call it your profit margin. So guys, we're going to now go straight into income, expenses and budgets, and let's work on a few examples. Example 1. Mr. DVD sold 5 DVD players at 999 Rand each. So he's selling each of these DVD players at 999 Rand. The cost price just means this is how much he had to go and pay to buy these DVDs. The cost price of each DVD player is 500 Rand. Firstly, they want us to calculate Mr. DVD's income. Remember, income means the money that he is getting into the business or this business is making. So we know that they are selling 5 DVD players at this business, and we know that each of them costs 999 Rand. So if I want to work out in total how much Mr. DVD will make, I need to times 5 by the selling price of each of the DVDs. So 5 times 999 Rand will give me my total income. Alright, so we can do that. 5 times 999 gives me an answer of 4,995 Rand. So therefore his income, or the business's income, will be 4,995 Rand. Alright, remember when we say they're selling something at a certain price, that's the same as the selling price. Okay, the cost price of each one is 500 Rand. So that's going to help us with the next question, which wants to know what is the total expense? So how much is Mr. DVD buying all of these 5 DVD players for? What is the total expense for the 5 DVD players sold? We know that the cost price of each of them is 500 Rand. We know that he has bought 5 DVD players. So if I want to work out the total expense, I need to take the 500 Rand and times that by the number of DVD players that he buys, and I will get 5 times 500 is 2,500 Rand. Okay, let's move on to the C part of this question. They want to know, does Mr. DVD make a profit or a loss? Remember, your profit is what you are left with after you take into account all of the expenses. Your loss will be if your expenses are greater than your income. So let's look at Mr. DVD's income. It's 4,995 Rand, and his expenses are equal to 2,500 Rand. So since his income, which was 4,995, is greater than his expenses, which was 2,500 Rand, this would then mean that he must make a profit. So that implies that he makes a profit since his income is greater than his expenses. Part D would like us to now actually calculate, so that means you need to show your workings here, calculate the actual profit or loss. Well, we know that he's made a profit, so we're only interested in working out his profit. To work out profit, we use the formula income minus expenses. So his income was 4,995 and his expenses 2,500 Rand. And 4,995 minus 2,500 Rand will give us an answer of 2,495 Rand. So that is the actual profit that he makes. So his income exceeds his expenses by 2,495 Rand. So that's what he will be left with. The next part would like to know what the profit margin is on all DVD players sold. Remember, your profit margin is really just the percentage profits that you are making. So we're taking the profit and expressing it in percentage terms. Because they are interested in the profit margin on all DVD players sold, we need to take into account all 5 players. So we remember that the profit margin we can work out by saying it's equal to the selling price minus the cost price all over the cost price times 100. Because we're interested in all the DVD players, we know that they all sold at an amount of 4,995 Rand. The cost price altogether was 2,500. Divide that by 2,500 and then times by 100. We could just write down at the top part, selling price minus cost price. That was just going to give us our profit. So we could have straight away just put in the 2,495. But if you didn't see that, you can work it out the long way as well. So it's 2,495 all over 2,500 times 100. And we are going to work out on our calculator what percentage profit that is. So it's 2,495 divided by 2,500 times 100. So we get 99.8, which we can write as 99.8% because we're interested in the profit margin. So on all of these DVD players that he's selling, he's buying them at 500 Rand each, selling them at 999 Rand. He is making a huge profit, a 99.8% profit. Okay, well, let's move on to the next example on budgets and expenses and income. In this example, example 2, we are told that the annual income, annual means for the entire year. So the annual income of a small business is 250,000 Rand. So in other words, in a year, they get in money of 250,000 Rand in total. We are told that its annual profit is 36.5% of its income. Okay, so that's interesting. Its annual profit, they have expressed it as a percentage of the income. The first question wants to find out what the annual profit is. So they ask us to calculate the annual profit. So they want to know in a year, if you're making 250,000 Rand, that's your income. And since we know that the profit is 36.5% times that amount. So it's 36.5% of that, or a fraction of that, is actually just solely profit. So in order to work out our profit, all we need to do is to multiply 250,000 by 36.5%, and we can work out what percentage or what amount 36.5% of 250,000 is. Remember, to work out your percentage, we write it as 36.5 over 100 times 250,000. Okay, this we can't do in our head, so we have to use our calculator. So it's 36.5 over 100 times 250,000. Do I have all the zeros? Yes, and that gives me an answer of 91,250 Rand. So what we've just worked out is that he will make an annual profit of 91,250 Rand in this year, where his total income is 250,000 Rand. So in other words, 91,250 Rand is 36.5% of 250,000. Okay, and that was his profit. They would then like us to find the annual expenses. Expenses, remember, all the costs that this company has incurred. We know that profit we can work out by saying income minus expenses. We have just worked out that the profit is 91,250 Rand. We know that this business has made 250,000 Rand of income, and what we would really like to work out is the expenses. Okay, so if I want to get to expenses, I'm just basically changing the subject of this formula. Profit is equal to income minus expenses. Therefore, expenses will be equal to income minus the profit. So whatever he didn't make in profit, he's going to have as an expense. So we just change the subject of the formula there. So our income is 250,000 minus the profit, which is 91,250. And that will give us a value for our expenses. So it's 250,000 minus 91,250. And that gives us 158,000 Rand 750, 158,750 Rand of expenses. So what you can see here is that his expenses were actually greater than his profit. But since his expenses wasn't greater than his income, he still managed to make a profit. Guys, let's move on to example 3. In this example, we are told that Lorato runs a small bakery from home. She bakes biscuits, muffins and cakes, and she then sells them to a local bakery. So she obviously has a small home business where she's baking and selling to this bakery. They want us to calculate Loretto's income. Income means how much of money is she getting in. And they then tell us the selling price of each of the items that she bakes. So they say she sells muffins at 15 Rand per dozen. A dozen just means 12. A dozen is made up of 12 items. So she sells muffins at 15 Rand per dozen, biscuits at 10 Rand a tray, and cakes at 20 Rand each. The bakery then orders 36 muffins from her, 2 trays of biscuits, and 4 cakes. So they've given us what the order is, and they want us to find out what her income will be, given that this is how much the bakery orders. Now, the first thing we're going to have to do here is, because our muffins, the cost price of the muffin, or well, the selling price of the muffins was given to us in dozens, we are going to have to change the 36 muffins firstly to a dozen. Okay, so remember 1 dozen is equal to 12. So therefore, if I'm looking at 36 muffins, this would be 3 dozen, because 3 times 12 is 36, or 36 divided by 12 will give me an answer of 3. So 36 muffins are equivalent to 3 dozen muffins. In order to work out her income, we need to multiply the selling price of each of the items by the number of items that she sells. So in the first case, we've got 3 dozen muffins being sold at 15 Rand. We then need to add on what she sells the biscuits at, and she sells a tray of biscuit at 10 Rand, but 2 trays are ordered. So it's 2 times 10 Rand to see how much she's going to make there in total. And she sells 4 cakes at 20 Rand each. It's 4 times 20. You can then work out each of these brackets individually. 3 times 15 will give me 45. 2 times 10 just gives us 20. And 4 times 20 will give me 80 Rand. Simply add all of these numbers together. 20 plus 80 is 100. 100 plus 45 will give me 145 Rand. So in this order, she is getting an amount in of 145 Rand. That's how much she's getting when the bakery orders that amount from her. They then want us to calculate her profit or her loss if it costs, and then they give us the cost price of each of the items that she bakes. Okay, so it costs 10 Rand to bake a dozen of muffins, so 10 Rand per 12 muffins, 8 Rand to bake a tray of biscuits, and 15 Rand to bake a cake. All right, first remember that profit or loss is equal to income minus expenses. But obviously then, in order to work out the profit, since I've already got the income, I still have to work out the expenses. And this is where the cost price of each of the items is going to help us. So her expenses are going to be equal to, remember she sold, they told us, 3 dozen muffins, but it cost her 10 Rand to bake. So in total, it's going to cost her 3 times 10 Rand. That will be the total cost price for the muffins, or the cost to make the muffins. Plus, it's 8 Rand per tray of biscuits, and she sells 2 trays. So therefore, in total, it's going to cost her 2 times 8 Rand to make 2 trays of biscuits. And it's 15 Rand to bake a cake, but she sells 4 of them. So in total, it's 4 times 15 to give us the total amount that she spends on baking a cake. Okay, so her expenses are going to be the total of each of the individual amounts. 3 times 10 will give us 30, plus 2 times 8 is 16, and 4 times 15 is 60. We can then add all of this together. 30 plus 60 is 90. 90 plus 16 will give me 106 Rand. So therefore her expenses are 106 Rand. But guys, be careful because we've done quite a bit of work, but we haven't answered the question yet. They still want to know what is her profit. So we still have to go back and work it out and say profit is equal to income minus expenses. So it will be 145 Rand minus 106 Rand, which will give us an answer of 39 Rand. So therefore the profit that she makes when she sells this order is 39 Rand. The last part of this would like us to calculate the percentage profit to the nearest percent. Remember, your percentage is something over 100. So we've already worked out the actual profit. We now need to write this in percentage terms. So in order to do that, we will take the actual profit. So to work out her percentage profit, we will take the actual profit, divide that by the cost price, which was in fact 106 Rand, and then times by 100 to give us the percentage profit. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here to work out the percentage profit is equal to the selling price minus the cost price. So selling price minus cost price just gives me my profit, divided by the cost price to make all the items times 100. Okay, we can then put this into our calculator to work out the percentage profit. Okay, so we have 39 over 106 times by 100, and that gives us an answer of 36.79, but be careful here, rounding off, they said to the nearest percent. So 36.79 to the nearest percent will just be 37%. Okay, so Lerato overall will make a profit here of 37%. So guys, we're going to continue talking about Lerato in example 4. Here we are told that Lerato's budget, or we are given Lerato's budget for 2009. Remember, a budget is really, in theory, this is what you expect your income to be, and this is what you expect your expenses to be. So it's really what you think is going to happen, but it might not necessarily happen. So her budget for 2009 is given as her total income is 40,000 Rand, and her total expenses are 15,000 Rand. But her actual income, so this is now really, this is what happens in 2009. Her actual income is 45,000 Rand, which is slightly more than she expected. And her actual expenses are 21,000 Rand, which is also slightly more than she had budgeted for. The first question wants to know, was Lerato's actual profit for 2009 greater than, so in other words more, or was it less than what she had budgeted for? So really what we have to do here is to work out two different things. We want to work out what her budgeted profit was and what her actual profit is, and then compare the two things. So remember that profit is equal to income minus expenses. And since in both of these we can see that her income is greater than her expenses, we can immediately see that yes, she has made a profit, whether it was budgeted or actual. Okay, so first let's work with the budgeted profit. So this is what she thought was going to happen. And we know that her income here was 40,000 Rand. And her expenses were 15,000 Rand. So we say 40,000 Rand minus 15,000 Rand, and we see that we get an answer of 25,000. 40,000 minus 15,000 is 25,000 Rand. So this is what she thought that she will get. But let's look at what really happened. Her actual profit is equal to, and we're given that her income here is 45,000 minus her expenses, which are 21,000. And here we will see that she makes a profit of 24,000 Rand. So in both cases, she's making a profit, but what you will see, and we'll be able to answer the question, was her actual profit greater than or less than? Her actual profit was less than what she thought it would be. So she expected to make more money than she actually did. So even though her income was more than what she thought, because her expenses went up as well, it ended up that her actual profit ended up being less than what she expected or what she budgeted for. So therefore, we can say the budgeted profit was more than the actual profit. So the budget is really just a guideline, okay? And you don't want to go, Lerato doesn't want to go too far away from her budget, so she's not too bad off. The next question wants us to express Lerato's budgeted profit as a percentage of her budgeted income. So her budgeted profit, I'm just going to call that B for now, her budgeted profit, BP, was in fact 25,000 Rand. That's her guideline. That's what she sort of thought she was going to make, and she wasn't too far off. And we want a budgeted profit as a percentage of her budgeted income. So her budgeted income, what she thought she was going to make was 40,000 Rand, and they want us to express that as a percentage. So this is why it's so important to remember all the work that you have done thus far on percentages. So to express the one as a percentage of the other, we say 25,000 over the bigger one, which is 40,000. We times by 100 over 1 to change this into percentage form. We can then do that on the calculator. So it's 25,000 divided by 40,000, and we times by 100 and get an answer of 62.5%. So she expected to make a 62.5% profit. All right, the last part wants her actual profit as a percentage of her actual income. So she expected a 62% profit, but what did she really get? So we know that her actual profit was equal to 24,000 Rand, and her actual income was equal to 45,000 Rand. So we can write this in percentage terms as 24,000 over 45,000 times 100. And let's see what we get. So it's 24,000 divided by 45,000 times by 100, and that gives us 53.333. So if we round that to the nearest percent, we are going to get 53%, but we'll leave it as 2 decimal places, so it's 53.3%. Okay, so her actual profit, she made an actual percentage profit of 53%, but her percentage budgeted profit was 62.5%, so it's slightly under. You can see that she was expecting to make a little bit more money and have a little bit less expenses. Guys, in this section of work, we are going to look at inflation. Now, I'm sure that you've all heard of the word inflation. Inflation just describes the overall or general increase in the levels of prices. You need to be very, very good at all of the previous work you have done on percentages in order to master this section, so make sure that you understand your percentages very, very well. Let's look at some of the terms we will be using when we deal with inflation. Firstly, the inflation rate. That measures how fast prices are increasing or how fast prices are rising, and this is always measured in percentage terms. Another common term that we use when we look at inflation is the CPIX. The CPIX is the Consumer Price Index, and what that does is it measures the monthly price changes in a representative basket of consumer goods and services. Now, in this basket of consumer goods and services, there are over 1,500 goods that we look at and look at their price changes on a monthly basis. If you hear that the inflation rate is 6% per annum, what that means is that the general price of consumer goods is now 6% more than it was in the same month a year ago. So we're measuring it and we're comparing it to the very same month a year ago, and we're saying, well, prices are now 6% more than they were a year ago the very same month. And the very, very important thing, and I'm sure if you read the newspaper and that, you will notice that the inflation rate changes all the time. It's continually changing. And if the inflation rate is decreasing, this does not mean that prices are decreasing. What it means is that the prices of goods are now rising more slowly than they were before. So it really does not mean that prices are decreasing. And if the inflation rate is increasing, this means that the prices of goods are rising faster than they were previously. We are now going to look at some examples using inflation. Example 5. We are told that a month's groceries for a family of 4 costs 1,500 Rand. So when they go to the grocery store, that's how much they're going to spend that month buying their groceries. The inflation rate is expected to be an average of 4% over the next 3 years. So that just means that over the next 3 years, the inflation rate is roughly going to be 4% all the time. So it's just a rough estimate. They want us to estimate the expected price of a month's groceries for this family in 3 years' time. So in 3 years' time, we want to know if it costs them 1,500 Rand right now to buy their groceries. We want to know, well, in 3 years' time, what's going to happen if we have an average inflation rate. So in other words, prices are rising on average at 4% per annum. So over the next 3 years, the inflation rate is taken as 4% every year. All right. Now, what you need to remember, and this is why I was saying that your work on percentages are so important, to get an increase, if you want to find out what the increase is after, or if you want to work out the percentage increase, let's rather say that. If you want to work out the percentage increase, what we're going to do is we take the original amount and we times that by 1 plus whatever the percentage increase was, and this is usually always in decimal form. So if we want to find out what the new amount will be after a percentage increase, we take the original amount and we times that by 1 plus whatever the percentage increase is. So here we're looking at a 4% increase every year. All right, so in the first year, we want to find out, well, in a year's time, what will it be? what will the groceries be worth? So we take the 1,500, which is the original amount. I then times that by 1 plus my percentage increase, 4% per annum. 4% is the same as 4 over 100, which we can write in decimal form as 0,04. So therefore this will be 1 plus 0,04. You can work this out on your calculator and let's see what we get. So we have 1,500 times 1.04, and that gives us an answer of 1,560 Rand. So in 1 year, at an inflation rate of 4%, a year later they're going to pay 1,560. In the second year, they're going to pay 4% more than the previous year. So that means to the 1,560 Rand, we now need to increase that by the same inflation rate. So it's times 1 plus 0,04. All right. So it's 1,560 times 1.04. And that will give us 1,622 Rand and 40 cents. It's 1,622. And guys, you'll notice we're not rounding off or anything as yet because we haven't finished. We haven't gotten to the third year, and that's where we really want to be, because we want to find out in year 3 how much are they going to pay for their groceries if inflation is 4% on average. So that means we need to take the second year, what they pay in the second year for groceries, and we need to increase that by 4%. So we times by 1 plus 0,04. We can then put that into our calculator. So it's 1622.4, which we had from before, times 1.04. And that gives us 1,687. We're going to round it off to the nearest cent here, so this would be 0.30 cents. So it's 1,687.30 cents. So in 3 years' time, on average, if the inflation rate is 4%, they're going to end up paying 1,687 Rand and 30 cents. Now the other way you could do it, this is all in one line. You could say, well, we know that we start off with 1,500 Rand, and we know that every year this is going to increase by 4%. So straight away we can multiply in every increase. So for year 1, it's going to go up by 4%. So that's the first year. The second year, it's also going to go up by 4%. So we times the previous amount by 4%. And then in the third year, we need to take everything that's happened so far and times that, or increase that by 4%. Okay, so it's basically exactly what I've done previously up here, but now I'm just putting it into one line. And you could then put all of this into your calculator, so you wouldn't need to break it up and do it step by step. We can put it all in straight away. So it's 1,500, and we have four times that's these groceries are being increased by 4%. So we need to times it each time by 1,04 to find our total increase, and you can see straight away we get the answer. Okay, so it just depends on whichever method you prefer to use, but both of them will give you exactly the same answer. And you can see the effect that inflation has. You can see that if you pay 1,500 Rand now, in 3 years' time you're going to be paying a whole lot more than you are currently because of this effect of inflation. So let's move on to example 6. Here we are told that the inflation rates in June 2003 was 6.1%. Okay, if a basket of goods cost 382 Rand and 70 cents in June 2003, what did it cost in June 2002? So here they want you to go backwards. They're giving you the inflation rate in June 2003. And they want you to say now, well, what did that same basket of goods that cost 382 Rand, what will it cost the year before? Okay, so the same month the year before, what will it cost? And remember, so what we're given here is in June 2003, we are given the inflation rate of 6.1%. And remember, at the very beginning, I told you that inflation rate of 6% or 6.1% in this case means that prices in this month are now 6.1% more than they were in the same month a year ago. Okay, so in June 2002, the prices were 6.1% less than they are now. Okay, so June 2003, we know that the inflation rate is 6.1%. We are also given that in June 2003, our baskets of goods cost 382 Rand and 70 cents. So we want to sort of go backwards. We want to know, well, what happened or what was the price in June 2002. Okay, so I've shown you this before to work out our percentage increases. To get the new amount, we have to take the original amount. Okay, so to get the new amount after a percentage increase, we take the original amount and we times it. This is just what we used in the previous example. We made use of this. We take the original amount times it by 1 plus your percentage increase, which is in decimal form. Okay, now look at what happened. We already know what the amount is. So we know the new amount is 382 Rand and 70 cents in June 2003. So we already know that that's what we are going to get. And we want to find out, what did it increase from? So in June 2002, what was that original amount? Okay, so we're working backwards. We want to know what the original amount is. And we know that the inflation rate was 6.1%, which we can write as 6.1 over 100, which is 0,061 in decimal form. Okay, so it's times 1 plus my percentage increase, which is 0,061. And I am looking for the original amount. So all I have to do to get this original amount is divide both sides by the bracket 1 plus 0,061. So I'm basically saying, let's make the original amount the subject of the formula. So we divide both sides. So I'm dividing the left-hand side and the right-hand side by that bracket. I'm going to add those together and I'll get 1,061 in that bracket. Divide both sides by our brackets and that just leaves us with the one that we want, which is the original amount in 2002. We can do that on our calculator. So it's 382.7 divided by this bracket, which is 1.061. And we get an answer of 360 Rand. To the nearest cent, it would be 70 cents there. Okay, so we rounded off to 2 decimal places. So we get 360 Rand and 70 cents. Now, as you can see, I mean, this must make sense to you. Obviously, if the prices have increased now to an amount of 382 Rand for this basket of goods, then previously it needed to be less. Okay, because now prices have increased. And you can see that previously in June 2003 to June 2002, so the same month a year ago, the prices were 360 Rand and 70 cents, which is 6.1% less than what they were in June 2003. Okay, so you need to be able to work backwards and forwards like this with inflation. You need to be able to find the original amount if they give you your new amount and they give you the percentage increase. Guys, we're now going to look at the next example on inflation, and in this one, we are going to be looking at Mr. Khumalo. We are told that Mr. Khumalo has a holiday flat in PE. PE is short form for Port Elizabeth. Everyone wants to go on holiday in PE, I think. That he rented out for 2,500 Rand per month. Okay, so that's the income that he's getting from this flat every month in 2003. He then raises the rent every year by the same amount as the rate of inflation. And this very often happens in practice. You won't continually, if you, for example, are renting a flat, you won't continually pay the same amount of 1,800 or whatever the case is every single year. The prices are going to go up. The rent is going to go up. And usually it does go up by the same rate as inflation. So he's doing exactly what is normally expected. We raise the rent by the same amount as the rate of inflation. They then tell us that the inflation was approximately 6% in 2004, 5% in 2005, and then 4.8% in 2006. So these are averages for each of the years. This is what on average the inflation rates were in those 3 years. They then want us to estimate the monthly rental for 2006. And the reason we're estimating here is because this is not exactly the inflation rate. The inflation, remember, changes every month. So this is just an average rate for the year. Okay, so it's just a rough estimate. Okay, so once again, your work on percentages become very important. I'm going to write this down one more time. For a percentage increase, to work out your new amount. So you should all be very good at this now. To work out the new amount, you take the original amount and we times that by 1 plus our percentage increase. Okay, because this is what we really need to do here. The rent was 2,500. We need to work out the percentage increase every year to finally get to 2006 and see what the tenant is going to pay in 2006 for rent. So first let's look at 2004. We are told that the inflation rate is 6%. Okay, so that means prices on average are 6% more than they were in 2003. Okay, and we need to find out how much of rent they're paying in 2004. Then we find out how much of rent they're paying in 2005. And then finally, we increase that amount to find out how much they're paying in 2006. Okay, remember your original amount is 2,500. That's what the rent starts at. And we need to work out the increase for every year. So in 2004, I take my original amount, 2,500, and I need to work out my percentage increase. So I times by 1 plus the percentage, which is 6%. I write that as 0.06 because 6% is 6 over 100, which in turn is 0.06. This will then tell me what the rent was in 2004. So what the 6% increase will mean that the person would have to pay in 2004. So let's work that out in the calculator. So it's going to be 2,500 times 1 plus 0.06. And here we get 2,650 Rand. So that's how much they're going to pay in 2004. But now in 2005, once again, the inflation changes to 5%. Okay? So although you can see that this means that the inflation rate is lower, it does not mean that the prices are decreasing. It means that they're increasing at a slower rate. That's very important. Prices are not decreasing since this rate is lower. They're not decreasing, they're just increasing at a slower rate. So to find out what he's going to pay in 2005, we take the amount from 2004, which is 2,650. We then need to find the percentage increase of that. So we have to times by 1 plus our percentage here, which is 0.05, since that is 5 over 100, which we can write in decimal form as 0,05. Work that out on the calculator. So it's the previous amount times 1 plus 0,05. And that gives us 2782,50. So it's 2,782 Rand and 50 cents. And this is exactly the point that I'm making here. You can see that even though the inflation rate is lower, the rent hasn't decreased. No, it hasn't decreased. It's just increasing at a slower rate. So if the rate was more than 6%, this amount would have been much, much higher. But because the inflation has now dropped to 5%, the rent is increasing at a slower rate. Okay, but it's still increasing. And then the one we are aiming for is 2006. So we need the amount from 2005 and we need to grow that. In 2006, the inflation rate is on average 4.8%. Okay, as a decimal it would be 4,8 over 100 as a fraction, then in decimal form 0,048. Okay, we're going to take that amount from the previous year, so from 2005. We take the 2782,50 times that by 1 plus the percentage increase to give us the new amount. Okay, this we can put into our calculator once more. So we're going to times the previous amount by 1 plus 0.048. And we get 2,916 Rand and 6 cents. So it's 2,916 and 6 cents. Okay, and that is in fact what the tenant is going to end up paying in 2006 to rent out this holiday flat of Mr. Kumalo. So you can see that although the inflation rate was lower than what it had started out as in 2004, the rent on average has still increased. So rent of 2,500 Rand now in 2003, well not now because now it's not 2003, but rent in 2003 of 2,500 Rand, in 3 years' time it would have increased to 2,916 Rand and 6 cents, and that's what you would have to pay to rent out this flat. Guys, we're going to look at now the last example on inflation. This is example 8. We are told that the following is taken from Kate's budget. Remember, a budget shows your expected income and your expected expenses. So that's what you think is going to happen, but it might not necessarily happen. A budget is just a guideline. This shows her main expenses, so the things she's going to pay for, all the costs she's going to take into account for a month. Okay, so they give us the expense items, and then they tell us how much she's going to spend roughly per month on that expense item. So for example, rent, she will pay 3,500 Rand. Car insurance, she's going to pay 600, and then other includes all the other things that we haven't taken into account. So any unexpected thing that might come up, maybe she wants to go to a concert or whatever the case is, something extra that she hasn't budgeted for, that's what goes into other. They then ask us, what are Kate's total expected, because remember it's just a budget, so it's not necessarily what will happen. What is her total expected monthly expenses? So all we have to do here is just add up what she thinks she's going to spend on each of these expenses. So we take the amount for rent, so her total expenses, or total expected monthly expenses, total expected expenses, that's going to be equal to the sum of this column. So it's going to be the rent, which is 3,500 Rand, plus food, which is 1,100 Rand, plus she's going to spend 350 on her phone bill, or she thinks she will, plus 600 Rand for car insurance, and 700 Rand for clothing or whatever other toiletries she needs, plus 600 Rand that she might just spend going out with friends or whatever the case is, and then 800 Rand for unexpected things. Okay, so all we do is we take all of her expenses and we add it up together, and let's see what we get. So we call up the calculator. Alright, so we've got 3,500 plus 1,100 plus 350 plus 600 plus 700 plus 600 plus 800, and that gives us 7,650 Rand. So she's going to spend 7,650 Rand, or that's what she's budgeted to spend in that month. Alright, now the next part says, if all of Kate's monthly expenses increase at the average annual inflation rates of 6.9%. So in other words, everything's now going to cost Kate 6.9% more than before. Calculate the new amount that she can expect to pay for all of these items. So we already know that right now she's paying 7,650 Rand. We want to know if inflation now works on this, and if all her expenses stay the same, then if inflation is 6.9% and she's still spending 7,650, what can she expect to pay for all of these items? Okay, so once again we're going back to that percentage increase that I mentioned right at the beginning. Percentage is very, very important for this section. We take the original amount that we are working with, times that by 1 plus our percentage increase. Okay, so we're going to take 7,650, which is what she spends now, or what her expenses are now, times that by 1 plus our percentage here is going to be 6.9 over 100, which is equivalent to 0,069. We put that in. Okay, and we can just simply put that into the calculator. We can make this a little bit simpler by adding that bracket up. And then let's just put that into the calculator. So a lot of this section, a lot of this work is based on you having good calculator skills. You need to be able to use your calculator and to work out percentages quite well. And we get an answer of 8,177 Rand and 85 cents. Let's just have a look at that again. It's 8,177 Rand and 85 cents. Yes, I did get that correctly. And this is how much more she's going to pay. So if her expenses are now 7,650, and annually, so that means a year later, she's going to pay 8,177 Rand if the inflation rate is 6.9%. So if on average prices of all goods and services rise at a rate of 6.9%, this is what Kate will end up paying for her expenses. So guys, now we have done income, expenses and budgets, and we've also looked at inflation, and it's time for us to do some exercises on this section in financial maths. So let's look at the exercise. Exercise 1. We are told that the zoo charges an entrance fee as shown below. On a particular day, 200 adults, 20 pensioners, and 120 children visit the zoo. Part A. Calculate the income the zoo receives on this day. Part B. If it costs 30,000 Rand a day to feed the animals and maintain the zoo, does the zoo make a profit or loss on this day? And determine the percentage profit or loss Okay guys, you've had some time to look at the exercise. Let's see if this is the answer that you got. Exercise 1, we are told what the zoo charges as an entrance fee. Okay, so this is how much it's going to cost per person to get into the zoo. If you're an adult, it will cost you 90 Rand. Pensioners, usually people who are over 60 years old and they're receiving a grant or that kind of thing, they will pay 60 Rand to get in. A child under 12 years old will pay 20 Rand to get in. Now, on a certain day, we are told there are 200 adults, 20 pensioners, and 120 children that visit the zoo. They then ask us to calculate the income that the zoo receives on this day. So income, remember, is the money that's coming in for whatever service they offer. So obviously the zoo lets you go in there, visit the animals and that. So this is the money they're going to get from you as an entrance fee when you get into the zoo. So on a particular day, we've got 200 adults entering. To work out the total income, what we need to do is we need to take the number of adults, which is 200 Rand, times that by the fee that's per adult. So the fee given per adult is 90 Rand. So we need to times the number of adults by the fee per adult, which is 90 Rand. So that will tell me in total how much the adults pay. I then need to add to this the total amount that the pensioners pay. And we know there are 20 pensioners, and each of them have to pay 60 Rand. So in total, they would pay 20 times 60 Rand. That's the amount of money they're going to get from the pensioners. Then there are 120 children, so they each pay 20 Rand to get in. So we need to times 120 by 20 Rand to see in total what the children would contribute to the income of the zoo. We can then times each of these brackets and then add all the answers together. 200 times 90 will give you 18,000. 20 times 60 is 1,200. And 120 times 20 will give us 2,400. Once we have all of those answers, we can put that into the calculator. So we have 18,000 plus 1,200 plus 2,400, and that gives us 21,600 Rand. So on this day, the zoo is going to get an income of 21,600 Rand. Now the next part says if it costs, so this is the expense now, it costs 30,000 Rand a day to feed the animals and maintain means keep up the zoo, keep it nice and clean. If it costs 30,000 Rand a day to feed animals and maintain the zoo, does the zoo make a profit or a loss? Remember, to work out a profit or loss, the profit, we say it's our income minus expenses, and loss, you can say expenses minus your income, because in that case your expenses are generally greater than your income. So here what we have to do is we have to compare the costs or the expense to the income, and we can see, well, 30,000 is greater than, it's more than 21,600 Rand. So it actually costs them more to maintain the zoo than they're getting on this particular day as income. So therefore, this specific day, they will make a loss since the expenses or the costs are greater than the income. The last part wants us to work out the percentage profit or loss. Now, in order to do that, we first have to work out what the profit is. Okay, so if we work out what the profit is or what the loss is, or in this case, because we are dealing with a loss, we work out what the profit or loss is, divide that by the total income, and then times by 100. Okay, so let's work out the total loss. It's going to be the cost, which is 30,000, minus the income, which was 21,600 Rand. 30,000 minus 21,600 is 8,400 Rand. So they made an 8,400 Rand loss. That's the amount of the loss. So to work out the percentage loss, we have to take the amount of the loss, which is 8,400, divided by the income, which was 21,600, and then times that by 100. So basically here what I've done is I've taken the loss. So I've taken the, if you remember, to work out a percentage profit or loss, we take the end value minus your starting value, and you divide it by the starting value. So in terms of this question, the end value was our actual expenses. Our starting value was our income. So that at the top bit was working out what the loss was, and the bottom bit is your starting value, which was your income. Okay, so we're just interpreting that formula for this question. We can then put that onto the calculator. Let's see what we get. So it's 8,400 divided by 21,600. All that is times by 100. And that gives us an answer of 38.9%. Or in fact, more correct than that, because they haven't told us how to round off, would be to round it off to 2 decimal places. So this would be 38.89%. That would be slightly more correct. So their percentage loss is 38.89% on this specific day. Guys, so I hope you got the answer to exercise 1. Let's now move on to exercise 2. Andile works for 6 hours on the weekend at a rate of 25 Rand per hour. He uses some of this money for going out with his friends. He is planning to go to the movies next weekend with 4 friends. His budget for this outing is shown below. How much does Andile earn in a weekend? Calculate the budgeted cost of this trip to the movies for all 5 of them together. How much does one movie ticket cost? Andile's friend has a movie club card, which allows him to receive a 30% discount for one ticket. What amount will he save on his movie ticket if he uses the card? Calculate the cost of each small snack pack and each large snack pack. If Andile only pays for himself, what are the possible amounts he can expect to pay for this trip to the movies? Hint, he can either buy a large snack pack or a small one. Okay, so let's look at the answer to exercise 2. You are told that Andile works for 6 hours on the weekend at a rate of 25 Rand per hour. So he gets paid 25 Rand for each hour that he's there. He uses some of his money to go out with his friends, and he is planning to go to the movies with 4 friends. His budget, remember the budget is just what he expects to pay, and this is shown here. 5 movie tickets in total will cost 225 Rand. 3 small snack packs in total cost 75 Rand, and 2 large snack packs cost 80 Rand. So the first question wants to know, how much does Andile earn in a weekend? So we know he works 6 hours every weekend, and we know that he gets paid 25 Rand per hour. So if we would like to know in total what his income is, we have to take the 6 hours and multiply that by 25. So 6 times 25 gives us 150 Rand. So he will earn 150 Rand for a weekend working. The B part wants us to calculate the budgeted, so in other words, what he expects this whole trip to the movies to cost for all 5 of them together. So that's very important. They want to know the total cost altogether, so not for each individual person. So what we have to do here is take the total cost for the tickets, the snacks, and add them together, and that will tell us what they expect to pay for this outing. So the total cost is going to be equal to 225 Rand, which is the total cost for the movie tickets, plus 75 Rand, which is the total cost for the small snack packs, plus 80 Rand, which is the total cost for the large snack packs. You add that all together, and let's see what we get here. So it's 225 plus 75 plus 80, and it's 380 Rand for all of them together. The next part, how much does one movie ticket cost? Well, we know in total they pay 225 Rand for all of the tickets. So it's 225 Rand for 5 of them, for 5 people. So if I would like to know how much each person pays, all I have to do is divide the total cost by the number of people, and that will give me the cost per ticket. So in other words, the cost for each ticket. So it's 225 divided by 5, which gives us 45 Rand. So each movie ticket costs them 45 Rand. I hope that so far you've got these answers. Let's move on to part D. Here we are told that Andile's friend has a movie club card, and this allows him to receive a 30% discount. A discount, remember, is something that you take away from the price. You don't pay the total price, you pay less. Okay, discount means you're going to pay less. What amount will he save on his movie ticket if he uses the card? So we know that a movie ticket costs 45 Rand. We've just worked that out. And we want to know what amount he will save on this movie ticket. So we know that the card gives him a 30% discount. So he will be allowed to save 30% of the 45 Rand. That's what the discount is equal to. So 30%, we need to work that out as a fraction, as 30 over 100 of times 45 Rand. And this will tell us what discount he is entitled to. So it's 30 over 100 times 45. and that gives us 13 Rand and 50 cents. So he will pay 13 Rand and 50 cents less than his friends are going to pay for his movie ticket. So it pays to have one of these movie club cards, it seems. All right, part E. Calculate the cost of each small snack pack and each large snack pack. Okay, so for that one, let's just go back. We know that the small snack packs in total cost 75 Rand, and the large snack packs in total cost 80 Rand. But 3 people, we don't know which 3. 3 of them are buying small, and 2 of them are buying large snack packs. So let's go back to the question. We know, let's write it down again. We've got 3 small packs and at 75 Rand in total, and then 2 large snack packs at 80 Rand in total. So to calculate the cost of each small snack pack, all I need to do is take the total amount, which is 75 Rand, divided by the number of people who are buying those small snack packs, and that will tell me how much each snack pack costs. 75 divided by 3 is 25. So therefore each small snack pack will cost 25 Rand. Then we know that 2 people pay in total 80 Rand for the large snack packs. So if I want to find out how much each of them pay, I have to take the 80 Rand divided by the number of people buying those large packs. 80 divided by 2 is 40. So it's 40 Rand each for a large snack pack and 25 Rand each for a small snack pack. Okay, and the last part of this, we want to know, if Andile only pays for himself, what are the possible amounts that he can expect to pay for this trip to the movies? And the hint here is that he can buy either a large or a small snack pack. Now remember, we don't know who is buying the small snack packs and we don't know who's buying the large snack packs. All we know is that 3 people buy small snack packs and 2 people buy large snack packs. So Andile could be in either one of those. Okay, so to work out the possible amounts, we need to take into account that he can either buy a large pack or a small one. So to work out his total cost, we need to add the ticket price, the movie ticket price, to his snack pack, which can either be small, which is 25 Rand each. So if he takes a small snack pack, in total he's going to pay the price of the ticket plus 25 Rand for the pack, and 45 plus 25 will give us 70 Rand. Or alternatively, he can take the large snack pack, in which case the cost of the movie ticket is still 45 Rand, but the snack pack now costs 40 Rand. So 45 plus 40 will give me 85 Rand. So you can see that if he buys the small snack pack on this movie trip, he's going to save himself 15 Rand. So guys, we've come to the end of Financial Maths 2. In this section, we looked at income, expenses, budgets, and inflation. And I hope that you managed and you tried all of the exercises at the end of this section.